I'm sure there are situations in which you try to learn a specific information and you feel like all that information just slipped through your fingertips. You could not remember anything that you studied at that point in time. Even if you just studied it just few minutes ago, you discover that it was as if you didn't learn anything at all. What if there's a way you can actually solidify that information you are trying to learn and get it into your long-term memory? Right here on today's video, I'm going to be teaching you the techniques to use in order to solidify and put any information you are trying to learn into your long-term memory in order for you to be able to remember vividly. Right here on this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 basic techniques that you can use in order to be able to solidify anything into your brain in order for you to remember vividly. So the first thing I'll be explaining is spaced repetition. The second thing that I'll be explaining is active recall, and the third thing that I'll be explaining is Feynman technique. Stick with me on today's video as I go through all these techniques step by step, and now you can actually apply it when you are trying to learn in order for you to remember anything you want to learn at any point in time. First of all, I'll be discussing what spaced repetition is. Spaced repetition is the act of revisiting anything you want to study at interval over a long period of time. It is actually different from cramming, because cramming is the act of actually suppressing a particular information at a very short period of time. Now, let me paint a scenario in order for you to understand what I'm trying to say very well. Now, imagine you are studying for a particular exam right now. For example, 3 months before your exam, and you'll be studying since then what you actually apply the spaced repetition, because you are studying at interval. You are revisiting over that 3 months. You've been revisiting what you need to learn at interval before the day of your exam. But cramming is just a situation whereby you've not been studying for that whole 3 months. You just decided that for that 1 week or for just 3 days, you decided that you want to pack everything you learned for the past 4 months into your brain at a very short period of time, and you expect to learn. Now, the person that actually applied spaced repetition is actually enhancing his long-term retention, because the more you actually review anything you want to learn at interval over a long period of time, that information actually goes into the long-term memory, because you are giving your brain time to consolidate that memory and put it in the long-term memory. But someone that actually applies cramming, he or she is storing what he or she is learning on the short time memory, because you didn't give your brain time to consolidate that information. Now, what's actually the importance of spaced repetition? Now, spaced repetition enhances long-term retention. For example, if what you need to learn is so much and enormous, spaced repetition is a particular learning technique that can help you break down everything you need to learn in order for it not to stress you too much, as opposed to cramming, when you need to cram everything you've been taught for a whole year or a whole semester in just 2 nights. So those are the importance of spaced repetition, and if you apply it, it will actually enhance your long-term retention very well. This is the forgetting curve, and you can see that on the horizontal axis we have days, on the vertical axis we have memory. And now the forgetting curve simply states that it is actually normal for you to forget, and as you learn something at any point in time, the forgetting curve slips down. For example, you learned something at this point in time, the first learning. Now, if you don't review what you learn, it is very normal that you forget over time. So in order not for you to forget, you have to interrupt the forgetting process by relearning again the second learning. When you relearn again, then you are interrupting the learning process, and again you tend to forget. Then when you relearn again, you are interrupting the forgetting process. When you relearn again, so what it's saying is that the more you review a particular information over a long period of time, the more you interrupt the forgetting process. And this is quite important when we are talking about spaced repetition, because when you actually space your learning, it is important for you to forget first. Then whenever you want to apply the spaced repetition, that is learning the second time, it could be the second day that you've spaced the learning. Now it is important that you apply the active recall. because when you actively recall what you learn, then without holding any book, then it is an assurance that you've actually learned that thing and you've interrupted the forgetting process, that is the forgetting curve. So the following day, you can review again by actively recalling or teaching what you learn, and also and as well you are applying the spaced repetition. And in fact, you are actually applying the retrieval practice too, because at that point you are actually retrieving the information. So that is all. That is what the forgetting curve is. It's actually showing how you forget information over time. And the more you review at different times, the more you interrupt the forgetting process, and it reduces the tendencies of you forgetting the information. But if you don't review, then it is very normal that the information will slip, the memory will slip down, and you tend to forget over time. That is all about the forgetting curve. So now let's go into how you can actually apply the spaced repetition by the use of flashcards. So when you're using flashcard, you can use an app called Anki Droid, because that app can actually help you insert questions and the answers, and can help you track your progress of spaced repetition over time. Now, that app can actually help you to apply spaced repetition, and is one of the apps that can help you retain more information. I used it while in school, so you can actually download the app on Apple Store or Google Play Store. Another way you can use the flashcard is by actually cutting a paper in this particular size and actually use the flashcards. Now, flashcard can actually help you retain more information, and it can also help you actually actively recall the information. Now, take for example, you might want to learn a formula, you might want to learn a definition, and you might want to learn a list of things. So it can actually help you learn those things. Now, take for example, look at this paper here. You can actually see that I asked what is economics at the front of the paper. So you might want to learn a particular definition, and at the front of the paper you write what that thing actually, what's the question you're asking is, what is economics. Now, at the back of the paper I wrote the definition of economics there. So if you are trying to learn a definition, you can write what is production, what is labor, what is chemistry, what is anything at all, what is dynamic inconsistency. Then you write the definition at the back. Then when you ask yourself, you can look at the front of the paper and ask yourself, what is economics? Then you check the back of the paper, you recite it to yourself. Then you go again and check the front of the paper, what is economics? Then at this point, you can actually decide not to check the back and try to recall the information that you've tried to learn. If you can recall vividly, fine. It is important to keep that card to the back. So the more you can actually actively recall a particular information, the more you should be able to suspend the card to the back, and you should bring the cards that you cannot actively recall to the front. That is the technique. So if you can actively recall the definition quite well, then you should shift it to the back. But if you cannot recall, then you should actually put it to the front, and it will actually reoccur. So the more you actually learn, and the more you try to want to actively record the information, the more that information solidifies. You have to keep doing that until it gets to a point whereby you look at the front of the paper and you can actually recall that back of the paper vividly. That is when you should stop learning. But if you can't do that very well, then you have to keep looking at it over and over again. And it seems handy because you can take it anywhere you want. Instead of actually reading your book linearly, you can actually compress everything you need to learn into the flashcard. That is all about definition. What if you want to learn a formula? Now you might want to memorize a particular formula and you don't want to cram, and you can actually apply the spaced repetition to interrupt the forgetting process. So you can ask yourself, what is quadratic equation? Now you write the formula at the back, then you recite the formula to yourself. You go back again and say, what is quadratic equation? You can try to recall can try to recall. If you can recall vividly, then fine, you've learned. If you can't, then you have to go back to it again. So the importance of flashcard is to interrupt the forgetting process, and that is actually what I discussed while I was explaining the forgetting curve. Because after the first initial visit, you actually tend to forget information over time until you interrupt the forgetting process when you relearn and review. Then if you keep doing that every day till the day of your exam, then it actually stays in your brain, and it stays at the it makes that information be in the long-term memory. But if you can't do that, so that is all about flashcards and how to apply it. So you can use it for definitions, like I said, you can use it for formulas, and you can use it for the list of things that you need to learn. So that is all about the use of flashcard, and that is exactly how you can apply the spaced repetition. The next technique that I'll be explaining is the active recall. Now, what is active recall? Active recall is a situation whereby you forcefully want to recall what you learned without having any access to the notes that you are trying to learn from. It is the situation whereby you just want to declare what you learn at will without having the access to the information. And this can actually enhance long-term retention. Now, this is actually different from passive learning, that is you rereading a book over and over again without actually removing the book away and try to recall at will. Now, active recall can contribute to memory consolidation and can help you. It serves as a form of feedback. For example, if you are trying to learn something from a particular book and you can actually put that book away and actively recall what you've learned, if you can learn it, if you can recall vividly, that means that memory has that particular information are sticked into your memory, and there are low tendencies that you forget. But if you cannot recall actively, then it is better you go back and read it. So at that point, it has served as a form of feedback to know what you've learned and what you don't learn. And it is quite important for students to apply this particular technique because, for example, because it has happened to me a lot of times where I didn't actually apply active recall, and I thought that I knew it because I passively read the book. Then I got to the exam, I was trying to recall, then I could not recall because I didn't actually get feedback from while I was actually preparing for the exam. So before the exam comes up or before your presentation comes up, it is quite important for you to actually apply the active recall because it is a form of feedback to know what you learn. So that is that about active recall. So the next technique that I'll be explaining is the Feynman technique. And the Feynman technique was propounded by Richard Feynman. He said if you teach something you know, it actually solidifies the memory in your brain. He emphasized that the art of teaching helps in retention of information and it helps you to remember vividly. One step that you can use in order to actually apply Feynman technique is to actually choose a topic. For example, a topic that you are trying to learn, a topic you are trying to present on, choose that topic and actually teach it to someone else. Then when you are teaching to someone else, at that point, it is a way to know what you know and what you don't know. And while you are teaching, it is very important not to hold anything while you are doing that because it is a feedback process. So when you are teaching and you discover that you could not remember it will not remember the thing you are trying to learn at that point, then it's a feedback to you that you need to go back and learn some things. So it's very important to go back and learn and actually come back and teach that thing again. And one important thing that is very cogent when it comes to Feynman technique is to be able to explain what you learned in simple terms. If you can explain to a child and the child can understand in simple terms, then you've successfully actually known the information. But in a situation whereby you can't explain to the person in simple terms, then you still need to go and learn that thing all over again. Richard Feynman actually stated that if you can be able to explain that thing to a toddler in a way that the toddler can actually understand what you taught, then it is said that that information has been retained. So that is all about the technique that can actually enhance your long-term retention. And if you found this video helpful, please click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. And actually don't forget to check out this video on how you can study And now you can study to understand instead of memorizing. So thank you so much for watching, and see you on the next video.